A Hoosier native and lifelong investigative journalist, I already had extensive knowledge of Indiana corruption. Only this time, I was observing from the inside, and what I saw terrified me. It happened when I was hired to work the Delphi murder trial as a fact-finding investigator.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the Delphi Dirt. I'm your host, Erica Morse, private investigator and former fact finder and a lifelong journalist who can speak to this case from the inside in a way that no one else can. For those of you who are rejoining me from the last episode, I remembered to turn off the ceiling fan this time so that hum won't be there. The last podcast was thorough, and it started to drop some of those receipts that I've been alluding to for about a year now. It allowed me to validate for many of you that I'm telling the truth, that Chris is telling the truth about our involvement in this case. And you'll see some more of those receipts today. Just a few more things that will solidify rock solid that we aren't frauds, we aren't lying, we're not looky-loos who forced ourselves in. We were approached and solicited and asked to work this case. I was. And I refused to work it without Chris because we are a team, a package deal, especially on something this big. So we'll see those receipts today. So last night, I'm sitting here working on stuff for this next episode and doing some research. Anybody who knows me knows I always have a documentary or an episode of Forensic Files going on in the background while I'm working on casework. And I was doing that last night with a documentary on RICO. All of a sudden I get this text message from Prof that says, hey, a little birdie just called me and told me that so-and-so is running his effing mouth about you and me on her channel. And I was like, on a Saturday night, they blamed you for Rick's conviction because you didn't do enough. Well, I'm not a lawyer, so there's that. But this is the part that I wanted to share. I think it's time for those emails containing all you tried to have them do that was outright ignored. And yes, I mean that investigator and that lawyer, to be thrown in their faces. And I said, some of them are being dropped this week. So that's something I want to clear up right away. The folks who are out there telling you that Chris and I dropped the ball are some of the same people we took vital information to dating back 2.5 years, and it was ignored. I cannot tell you, I'm going to give you a short list right now of things that Chris and I hyper focused on relating to this trial, and answers we are still awaiting, evidence we are still waiting to see. And there are reporters out there who can confirm that for you. Because if you were in the trial, then you know how the end of day wrap up went, where reporters were allowed to stay back inside the courtroom and view that day's evidence that had been presented to the jury. They were allowed to look at the evidence and take photos. And I sent a text message to Barb McDonald very early on in the trial, asking her that if that blue jacket was brought out at any point and shown to the press, would she please grab some information off of the text for me, because 2 years after I started barking about that jacket, and I wasn't the only one, but I was the loudest one. That jacket is a key factor in my mind to proving that Rick Allen could not have possibly committed those crimes. There is something very critical about that jacket as it pertains to its age. Rick Allen could not have been wearing that jacket on the bridge in February of 2017. It's not possible. And Indiana State Police knows that, I believe. And Carroll County Sheriff's Department knows that, I believe. And the prosecutors in Carroll County know that, I believe. It is my belief that every one of those individuals and everyone involved in the testing of evidence knows damn well that if I get my hands on that jacket, Rick is walking free. Now, it's my understanding that jacket may be brought up in this Hulu documentary. I believe I was told that Kathy mentions it, and that would not surprise me. I'm only on episode 1 because I'm not watching it the way the rest of you are. I'm watching it with a notebook, and I'm pretty much taking stock of every word because, yikes, I would say about 40%, maybe 50% of the interviews that are taking place in that documentary are suspect. What you're being told in that documentary is suspect. Not by the producer necessarily, but by the people sitting for the interviews. And talk about derailing or distracting the defense and members of teams hired by the defense. We'll say it like that. There is someone very crafty in all of this that many of you probably don't know. And this woman has taken it upon herself to behave like some secret agent / double agent who has buddied up to all sides involved in this case and has been recording and documenting interactions from all sides and trying to get some of us to take each other out. So I made it only through a little bit of the first episode before I called Chris and said, "Did you catch this?" "Yeah, but I wasn't sure." And then it was like this. I was like, double agent. I am not looking to get anyone injured, but there are people out there who are trying to get me injured, and you can knock that shit off now. Don't make me have to make a deal with the devil. I will if it means I get to keep breathing. But if you continue to play all sides of this, someone is going to get hurt. And I will protect myself at all costs. And I will protect my loved ones at all costs. Everybody else did. I have recordings of people saying they don't know how they're going to do this while keeping themselves and their own families safe. There were conflicts arising all around. People were being forced to choose between their own safety and that of their own loved ones, and how hard they fought for Rick Allen. And some of them panicked. One turned to the bottle. Oh, if I wasn't hated before. I'm trying not to judge anyone's choices here because I know how dangerous it was and still is. I know that danger better than almost anyone else associated with this case. I am the one who has not hugged my children in over a month. I am the one who has been uprooted in every aspect of her life because she made the mistake of trying to bring out the truth against a very large group of people from several organizations who have had no choice throughout the years but to come together and work somewhat as allies in order to maintain secrecy of their businesses. And listen, I spent 25 years, the better part of 25 plus years, working in a corporate media environment. And what I mean by that is many of my years in media were in upper management. So negotiations are my wheelhouse. Handshake deals are my wheelhouse. If you need something and I need something, we might be able to come to some form of an agreement that benefits everyone. But I said it before and I'll say it again. Rick Allen has to walk out those doors. And it's doable. But it isn't doable if we have women out there running around thinking that they are secret agents and producers who are trying to get people to leak discovery because they think that the word producer is going to make me or Chris a fucking fangirl. We don't fangirl easily. You want to know who I fangirled over the most in my entire life? A man named Dr. Clarence B. Jones. He was the personal speechwriter and attorney to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. That is my biggest fangirl moment. I fangirl over authors and writers and poets and social justice warriors and civil rights activists. I mean, the people who bring active change to our world, the people who put it all on the line. And when Chris and I, especially me, because people hounded and hounded and hounded at me to try to get me to see Rick Allen as being guilty. When all of those people failed, then they had no choice but to turn on me and turn on me loudly because they knew that the moment I had the time to put all of this together, clear my head, sit down, and organize it, that the truth was going to take them down. I don't have to sit here and make up anything. The truth will set us all free. This case is not singular. Delphi is not singular. I think it is fair to say, in my professional and expert opinion, that had the Flora fire never happened, Abby and Libby may still be alive. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments section. Prove to me I'm wrong in the comments section. If Tara Stevens had been hit in any other location in Michigan City that night in September 2020, her case would most likely be solved. If I had not sent that tip to Unified Command in March of 2022 and accidentally tipped off Jerry Holman et al. That a private investigator in Michigan City had accidentally stumbled onto some information that would destroy Delphi if it ever got out. Which is why that email I sent to the Abby and Libby tip line in March of 2022 never appeared in our discovery. Chris and I reviewed every tip in that Orion file. and we requested any other stragglers that were out there. Matt set up a sync drive for us, so anytime new evidence or new information came forth and it hadn't been added to our hard drive, Matt dropped it into a secure and encrypted sync drive that we then downloaded to our hard drive. There are tips that went to Unified Command that we, as the two fact-finding investigators for Jensen, were tasked to review every tip, never saw. The day we got that hard drive, Chris was at my house, and we opened that bad boy, and the very first thing we did is started searching for those Unified Command tips. We knew within 10 minutes of getting that hard drive that Jerry Holman had withheld exculpatory evidence, and we couldn't get people to listen. So don't come at me and say that I got Rick convicted. Let me put it like this. Like I said to Prof, if I want somebody to create a cheer for Rick Allen to get out of prison, rah, 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 I'll call Amy Peppers over in Columbus and I'll ask her to write a cheer. But I'm not going to sit here and let some uneducated woman blame me for the conviction of a man I fought to save and my best friend. Especially when, as I pointed out to Prof, I'm not even a lawyer. I brought things to their attention that were ignored. So don't come at me and say that I failed Rick, because I didn't. I'm out here fighting for him very much still. Well, as we were told, 90 minutes after his conviction, when Chris asked, what do we do now? We were told by one of the lawyers to go back to our Airbnb, pack up, go home, and go back to our normal lives, or whatever semblance of normal there is left. And I looked at that lawyer and I said, what home? He kind of looked at me, he said, what? I said, they ran me out of my house 2 weeks ago. They took my house. These cops convinced a man I have known for 40 years to break a land contract and publicly turn on me and call me a squatter to convince everyone that I could not pay my bills. My payment on that house was $350 a month. I don't even want to hear it. The lawyers who specialize in real estate and the cops who specialize in mafioso tactics convinced a man I have known for 40 years to break a contract and resell that house for 3 times its value while keeping my money as well. That's what that was all about. So anything you read about or saw videos about, all of that was concocted. It was fabricated. Those messes you saw in that house, the man who held that video camera made those messes, not me. I'm not even getting into that nonsense right now, other than to say the level of desperation that people went to distract each and every one of us. If you don't see the pattern by the end of this segment, by the end of this podcast, then you don't want to see the pattern. The FBI, when they build a RICO case, it is based solely upon pattern. It is a pattern of proving that the people involved, number one, are always and continuously involved in criminal events. Their names continue to crop up. They have relatives involved. You're building a graph. You're building a flowchart of an organization. In this case, we have multiple organizations involved. And I am not looking to pick a fight with any of them. I am, however, forced to pick a fight with the deputy dogs whom you unfortunately had to lean on to try to pull off framing Rick Allen. And now you've got a bunch of idiot Keystone cops who have botched this thing to high heaven, trying to frame a PI and journalist and everyone around her You guys made it way too obvious, Holman. Way. Swistek, you're a fucking idiot. Swistek, for being a chief, that man is not bright. Using my own sister, your childhood friend, that was so transparent. Anyway, I digress. If you take your car to a mechanic and he breaks it, you don't take that car back to the same guy who made it worse. You take it to a different mechanic. Holman is not the mechanic to whom you should be taking this particular vehicle. He doesn't know the options for a way out. And as of 2 days ago, I thought there was only one option, and it made me nervous that I would potentially have to make that deal or shake those hands or say, if you order him released, I won't report this. And we never had this conversation. Do you know how scary it is to consider saying that to some really, really dangerous people? But I will if I have to. Then I realized that I had been holding on to a gold mine all along, and I went back and I looked further and further. Again, I don't care what anybody judges me on. There are things that haven't meant as much up until now. And when you go back and you look at something, every time you learn something new, it has more meaning and more depth. And sharing that tip with you the other day reminded me that I am holding a Franks violation and a Brady violation, because nowhere in those tip files that we have do those emails exist. See, I didn't just send that one tip. I sent another tip about Sean Adkins. So did other people. As I mentioned the other day, in March of 22, when I sent that email, Chris and I were knee deep in pretrial prep for the trial of Sean Casey Adkins out of Colorado City, Texas, for the 2010 abduction and foul play death of 13-year-old West Texas cheerleader Hailey Dunn. So, upon discovering that there was a potential ritualistic aspect to Delphi, I did what others did as well, and that was send an email to the Abby and Libby tip line about Sean Adkins and say, hey, I know he's a Texas guy, I know he's a Texas suspect, and blah, 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 but there are some similarities going on here. One being the ritualistic element. The ritualistic element that was so carefully almost hidden by Hailey's mother and thankfully caught by some people. And Clint Dunn got a call one day that his ex-wife had just tossed a witchcraft book into a dumpster outside of the family's house, and that she told her friend that if the FBI came looking for that book, that she was to lie to the FBI and told them that it was never in Billie Jean's house. And this was a few months after Hailey Dunn disappeared. So that woman told her boyfriend, who was Clint's best friend, and Clint got a phone call, and Clint ran over and dove headfirst into that dumpster and pulled out that witchcraft book and called the FBI, and they came and took possession of it. Clint has told this story on several podcasts. At any rate, I and others sent in that tip. But the other reason I wanted him investigated, or what we say ruled in or ruled out, our team calls it, was that in the Hailey Dunn case, there are upwards, depending on which affidavit you look at, 105,000 to 109,000 questionable and inappropriate images that were found on multiple devices throughout multiple residences, all connected to Sean Atkins. And eventually, Sean was released 3 weeks before he was supposed to go to trial. 4 days before he was released, Clint, Don, and I met with the two prosecutors from the Special Victims Unit of the Attorney General's office in Texas. They flew up from Austin and met with Clint and I at the Michigan City Police Department for several hours. And they were allegedly there to prep Clint for his trial against Sean, in 3 weeks. I think we were there for about 4 hours. Yes, that whole thing's recorded. And Clint, they spent an hour alone with Clint prepping him for his upcoming testimony, only to bring me back in the room and then soften the blow to Clint that, well, we actually offered the dude a plea deal and they're supposed to come back with an answer to us by Monday. And we're like, what do you mean you offered the guy a plea deal? We go to trial in 3 weeks. Well, there's some questionable analysis on the soil samples and one report doesn't match the other. I don't care, run a different report. We've got this guy on 50 different things tied to this case. This is one of the tightest circumstantial cases, not counting the phone data, the DNA match. Now we've got the soil testing. I still say that the diatom solved this case on the mud on the boots, but what the hell do I know? I was only the lead PI on the damn thing. 105 to 109,000 images, and not a single one was ever prosecuted to that SOB. And just like we were talking about the other day with Neil Lockman's arrest and conviction, arrest that was hidden from the public, by the way, secret arrest, we cannot find a single mention anywhere of that man's arrest in March. The indictment on March 21st was sealed, unsealed after his arrest, but we can't find a single mention of this. And the mouthpieces of the Midwest, or the mouthpieces of Michigan City, meaning the damn local paper, the News Dispatch, Hometown News Now, Region News, NWI Times, y'all sure don't want to be talking about this arrest or this conviction, do you? Only NWI Times put a little snippet in there. But you all don't want to report on a cop who was just convicted of CSAM. But you will put my face, plaster it all over the front page, for a false arrest for a misdemeanor animal abuse. Man, screw each and every one of you. A few have gotten smart and removed that coverage, but it is too late. The damage has been done. Y'all don't know what's forthcoming. I got nothing but time now, between lawsuits and bar complaints and excise complaints and health department complaints and complaints to agencies some of you bad guys have never even heard of. When you force me to go 10 deep into an agency list to find somebody who will take the report who isn't compromised or owned by one of you guys, then damn it, I'm gonna get that win. But it can all go away, because I have solutions, and they're good ones. So don't trust that mechanic who broke your car in the first place. You really might want to get a second opinion from someone who is clearly intelligent enough to have figured all of this out. Okay, so it is time to shift, because I'm probably 20-30 minutes into this already and want to get to the distraction part badly. So I think I'll probably end up breaking this up into two parts. The first for me is most important because I was an investigator. It's how the investigative team was distracted and what was thrown our way to keep us from being focused on Delphi, on reading the discovery, on conducting it, setting up interviews, conducting interviews, all of that. And it's a pretty easy course to follow and a timeline to follow if you want to see it for what it is, if you want to see it for the truth, because that's what it is. In order to effectively lay the groundwork for this portion, in order to effectively lay the groundwork for this portion of the discussion, I have to take you back to the day Rick Allen was arrested, Friday, October 28th, 2022. That is the day that I was told that someone on my friends list would be traveling to Delphi to celebrate with the family and participate in some investigatory aspects is kind of what I was led to believe. I don't know if it was ever true or not, but that's what I was told by this individual. This is someone who happens to be a podcaster, is very good friends with Nancy Grace, and has an inexplicable connection to this case that doesn't make sense, other than maybe those press connections. This is someone who's tied to, I guess, so it's no secret if you follow this case that there's kind of this battle, so to speak, of certain journalists and networks going on. Hulu and Court TV and Discovery and all of these networks, even the Nancy Grace people, want exclusive access to this story. Law and crime, and then you've got like your regional and your statewide networks and stations and even some newspapers. Well, some of those people developed unbalanced relationships with the police in this case, dating all the way back to the crimes in 2017, and have been a part of spinning the narrative about the crimes and the events of those days themselves. And I'm not saying this person has. I'm saying that there has been a very specific and coordinated effort to use certain women, especially moms, maybe women who are emotionally driven by a story this heinous and this cruel and this unnecessary, to report to the public in such a way that bad information was being disseminated. It didn't occur to me until 5 months later that this was occurring. It goes back to a conversation that I had either on the 28th or 29th of October of 2023, right after Rick was arrested, when I received a phone call from Cheryl McCollum. Now, I'm not sure how to feel about this moving forward, and I feel like this will probably break a friendship, and if this is what has to come to that, I guess it's okay. I was told by Cheryl during that conversation that she was headed to Delphi. And at the time, I was just a journalist and private investigator. Chris and I were knee deep in preparations for the Hailey trial, and I wasn't on this case yet. So Cheryl reaching out to me and saying, "Hey, I'm going to Delphi," was like, cool. Good for you. I'm glad you can be there for the families. My God, they're going to need your help advocating and helping navigate all this press and all this stuff. And so she calls me. She gets to Delphi and she sees the family, and she calls me while we were talking. I, made the suggestion that if I could get down to Delphi and have lunch with her while she was down there, that I would love to do that. And she's like, yeah, I'm only going to be in town for a day or two, but get your butt down to Delphi, let's connect. So then she calls me once she gets to Delphi. And I ended up, I think I had a case. I think I got called out on a case. But anyway, something came up that day and I couldn't make it down to Delphi. And we just weren't able to see each other. But she calls me and says, I'm paraphrasing here, oh my God, Erica, guess where I'm standing? And I was like, where? And she's like, in Rick Allen's fire pit. And I'm like, no shit. She's like, yeah, Erica, this is bad. Like, this is bad, bad. And the conversation goes as such, basically, that she's standing in the middle of this huge fire pit. And there are things inside this fire pit that indicate or point to Rick's guilt. Then she says something to me about a cat and how they're digging up a cat on the property to try to identify some animal hairs. Now, I'm like, I'm a PI, true crime world. I do this for a living. And of course, I'm eating up every word. And I felt like I didn't know it in that moment, but looking back over the last few weeks, I think that phone call was made to get me to jump on the reporting bandwagon of what I was being told. Like perhaps that I was being used to report this through VNO because I'm an Indiana journalist and an Indiana PI and I have a lot of Indiana followers. So if I had picked up this story and ran with it, and I was being called on Court TV at the time alongside Jason to discuss this case because I am an Indiana PI, because I was in the region where Delphi was going down. So I was being called in to do a lot of analysis at that time on Court TV. And it occurred to me that I would have made a fantastic voice to re-report this information without confirming it independently. So I get this call telling me that she's standing in Rick's fire pit. And then she tells me she's going over to the crime scene to check out some stuff. And then she takes off, gets on a plane, and leaves. Now, for those who want to say that I missed things or whatever, and how dare I go back now and finally figure some things out, let me set you straight on something about October of 2022. It was the worst month of my life, no holds barred. I have never had a worse 4-week period than October 3rd of 22. Well, actually like about a 55 day period. From October 3rd of 2022 through November 26th of 2022. And then the corresponding months after that. Because that month I lost a record number of people whom I loved. Half my family in 50 days. And to hear people criticize me because I wasn't more astute or observant during that period where a couple of phone calls to me were made about a case I wasn't even working. So it didn't mean that much to me on October 30th when I received that phone call and was told about this big fire pit. But then Jason Jensen called me to come on board on his agency in Indiana, his new agency he was applying for, and to spearhead the Delphi case out of the Indiana office. And suddenly that conversation from 5 months ago became important. I should say 4 months ago that became important. Not yet, but it would become important on March 28th of 2023. which was the first time Chris and I made our way to the Allen home on Whiteman Drive. And as we pulled up, if you've ever been to the house, and I know a lot of people have been to it or by it or whatever, if you've ever been to that house, you know it's that land is very open. It doesn't have like a privacy fence. There was nothing being hidden back there where it was nefarious. It was a very wide open piece of land and a beautiful, pristine house. Kathy was immaculate at keeping, my God. And Rick was immaculate with that yard. So when we pulled up to that house, instantly I observed a visual that did not appear to match that phone call. So I walk in, and almost instantly, and Chris can confirm this, and hell, we're about to confirm it with a recording. Because as I said, we recorded that first meeting back then when we went to the house because we were taking inventory of items. We were looking at timelines. Anyway, I digress. I have a quick question, real quick. The day after he was detained, is this someone you recognize as being here from the police department or crime scene unit?
I have never seen that person.
Okay.
Who is that?
It's Cheryl. So all of this is actually recorded with me making a beeline to the back of the house to look out the windows or the back door. And the first, Kathy's like, "What are you looking for?" And I said, "The fire pit." And I turned around and looked at Chris and said, "We have a problem." That has been a problem for me since March 28th of 2023. The moment I realized I was lied to on October 30th of 2022 by someone who is very close to the police in this case, has a podcast that has aggressively covered this case on the Rick Allen is guilty side, and who is also very close with the family. So now we got problems. And then I asked about a cat allegedly being dug up out of the yard. And Kathy started laughing and she's like, "I don't know where that rumor started." But there was no cat that was dug up. And again, Chris and I exchanged looks and I'm like, really? Because we can tell you where that rumor started. I will never understand why people feel the need, for whatever reason, to pull me into their cover-ups. But let me make this crystal clear. I don't cover up crimes, okay? So if you come to me and you tell me you're standing in an accused bad guy's fire pit and I find out 5 months later you're full of shit, I'm going to find out why you told me that. And the reason is, I believe, and if somebody wants to prove me wrong, feel free to try. But I believe I was used and manipulated in that moment by people who thought I would go onto Court TV network and spin that false narrative and that I would become the next Gray Hughes or Murder Sheets. And not only was my personal life falling apart with all of these deaths at that time, so the timing of them attempting to manipulate this narrative with me was inconvenient for my grieving period, my grieving process. Thank God. Thank God I was distracted at that time. Not thank God I lost all those people. But God in the universe literally had my back on that one. Because I may have been easily fooled. I am known for going after guys like Rick. Chris and I are known throughout Indiana for going after guys like Rick. So bringing that bullshit to me and trying to get me to re-report that It took me months to realize what was happening. Oh, but the moment I did, all of you were put under the microscope. All of you. Every single one of you with a connection to that lie was put under a microscope and don't even know it. People want to know why y'all are still sitting on my friends list. It's because I'm watching you watch me. So then, on top of this fire pit bullshit and this dead cat lie, I then reach out to Jason and say, hey, I got somebody who claims she was at the crime scene. I need that crime scene log. And from what we can tell, from what we have reviewed, that person's name does not appear anywhere in that crime scene log. So now I have questions as to how many people were allowed in that crime scene on October 30th, whose names we don't know, had access to that crime scene to potentially manipulate it or alter it. That is only the beginning of how we were distracted. But that sets the stage for what then happened. You can then draw and connect the dots, draw the parallels and connect the dots between all of the friendships on that side of that fire pit lie to every journalist who has been spinning false narratives about Rick's guilt. Yeah, how's that for drawing a line in the sand, folks? That's why I've told some of you producers I've lost all respect for you. You tried to play us, playing both sides like this. This is a man's life in the balance. Here's the thing. Even if you are incapable as a journalist, air quote journalist, podcaster, producer, YouTuber, I don't care what. If you are incapable of separating your feelings and your emotional baggage about these two girls, then back off of that angle and look at it from Rick Allen's perspective. Because you can be angry about these girls having their lives taken, but let me tell you something. Newsflash, you cannot bring them back. That time has passed. You cannot save their lives. So if you want to be some type of hero in the Delphi case, then I suggest you get on board real quick with how we're getting Rick Allen to walk out those doors. Because this distraction shit was unnecessary. Oh, I'm sorry. It was necessary. Because it's the narrative that Holman needed to spin, to sell everybody on that junk PCA. It was that weak. It was that fragile. It was that easily torn apart. And for all of you asking why, Erica, would they call you and try to get you on board with this false narrative? Well, friends, I believe it has everything to do with that tip that I showed you the other day and will bring back up now, alerting Unified Command that child exploitation was taking place in Michigan City and that we may have a connection in Michigan City to the Anthony Schatz profile. I was not supposed to know that. I was never supposed to know that. I was never supposed to know that cops were being accused of being in possession of cameras and tripods and recording children in certain establishments. I was never supposed to know that. And I would have never known that had Tara Stevens not been hit at the exact spot she was in front of Creekside. Because what was happening in Creekside, according to those witnesses, that night alone was enough to connect half these dots to Delphi. This is an organized crime ring, okay? Multiple organized crime rings, to be precise, who have no choice but to work in alliance to shut all of us up. That's why I'm such a target. I sent a tip to Unified Command and told these yahoos that I knew things I wasn't supposed to know. And that 11 months after I sent that tip, I, of all people, am hired to work on the defense of the innocent man falsely arrested and charged with these crimes. That tip was not the only one that I sent to Unified Command. I sent a second tip, and that was in regards to Sean Adkins. At the time this all went down, the time I sent this tip, Chris and I and Clint Dunn were knee deep in preparations for the trial, the felony murder trial in Texas of Sean Casey Adkins for the death of 13-year-old Hailey Dunn, Clint's daughter. And we run a page called Who Killed Hailey Dunn? And people started telling us on that page that they had sent in tips about Sean because there had been new information that came out in the news that there may have been a ritualistic aspect to that crime to Delphi. And it also happened to occur on a holiday, which our profile says is Sean's MO. And so enough, and the big possible connection, which in Hailey's case, 105 to 108 to 9,000, depending on which affidavit you believe. 105 to 109,000 images of CSAM and other inappropriate digital materials were found in residences and on devices connected to Sean Adkins in the Hailey Dunn disappearance. So now we've got this ritualistic aspect, we've got the CP that nobody ever got charged on, sound familiar? And we've got people who follow our own case saying, hey, just FYI, you might want to reach out to this Abby and Libby tip line and talk to them about Hailey's case because there seem to be some interesting coincidences here. Well, the tip I sent on Sean was actually the first one I sent to the tip line. The one that I shared with you the other day about information we uncovered in Tara's investigation, that was sent later. So I'm not going to share that tip because Hailey's case has been reopened because that SOB is out walking free again. And I'm sending it to our ranger to say, hey, this was never checked out. Can you at least confirm his whereabouts on that date? Not that I think he was involved, but we are rule in, rule out, and I want that man behind bars more than anyone else on the planet, so it's a rabbit hole I'm jumping down. Or at least sending it off to the rangers so they can jump down it with some digital information. But all this distraction. Anyway, so we send this tip. Guess what? That tip was not in our discovery either. So now we've got the tip about the child exploitation, child trafficking, Anthony Schott's profile that I sent in March of 22. Plus we've got the tip that I sent on Sean Adkins that never made its way into our discovery. So yesterday I started making posts on our other pages, especially to what we call Hailey Nation, our 20,000 followers over there. And I was like, hey y'all, we need those tips. Because guess what, guys? I'm not using this podcast to get likes or subscribers or even make a few bucks. If you haven't figured it out by now, I'm building a RICO case right before your very eyes. And those tips not making their way into our discovery, we have a name for that. It's called a Franks violation. It's called a Brady violation, and it's an automatic mistrial for Rick Allen and him walking out the doors in Oklahoma until this thing can be retried. So while idiot attorney over there is sitting there with cheerleading pixie, I don't even know what to call this stupidity. But while these morons are sitting over there calling me names and blaming me for getting Rick convicted when I'm not a lawyer, I didn't cross-examine people in this trial. I'm actually out here busting my hump, finding solutions. We may have a mistrial here that is provable, not just suspected, but provable. And it may simply be because an investigator who was contracted as a fact finder on the defense, whatever, happened to also send 2 tips that never made their way into discovery. I never saw a single tip in discovery with Sean's name on it. And we have half a dozen people in Texas who tell us they sent them. Why? Why is Sean Atkins' name being kept out of this? Hell if I know. Trust me, if anybody would jump at the chance to link that SOB to Delphi, it's me. Nobody would link him faster. I see nothing there yet. But I do see that tips did not make their way to us that I know for a fact were sent. Since it didn't make its way into discovery, it's not confidential. It's not work product. For me, it's work product on the Tara Stevens case. But that work belonged to another agency. So sorry. That's the other thing. When you're going to distract or derail defense people or investigators who are contracted by the defense, you better make sure we can't pick up the phone and call in favors with half the damn missing persons community. Just saying, you underestimated us big time. In June of 2023, right as our agency license was finally being installed and the state of Indiana decided that they were finally going to let Jason Jensen have a private investigation agency, they knew what was coming. The minute Jason applied for that license, anybody who was watching our coverage on the Court TV network knew Jason had probably called Erica, and Erica was probably coming on board, and oh crap, she's put these things together already. Our agency license was approved on June 22nd, 2023. The following morning, I officially opened the office under Jensen Investigations. I had rented an office space on Franklin Street in Michigan City, and been running it just as Victims News Online up until then, and under the other agency that I had been doing work for out of Indiana. And then Jason's license came through, and we opened Jensen immediately because we needed to get up to speed quickly on Delphi. That very morning, Indiana State Police went out and put out a post warning the residents of Indiana not to trust our team. We weren't open for business an hour or two before the Lowell Post of Indiana State Police, a post supervised by Jerry Holman, went out and told every witness and every potential witness not to trust Erica and Christine. They didn't have to say our names. The damage was done because they cleaned up the comments section over the years. There were hundreds of comments on this post originally. My name was being thrown out every 5 or 6 comments. The damage was done. People thought it was a joke that I was being called out by the police. And what was really happening was the morning that the 2 female fact-finding investigators were officially and legally open for business under that license to begin contacting witnesses in this case and conducting interviews and investigations. The agency responsible for putting that man away, who answered to the cop who was now being accused of framing him and staging a cover-up, went out and publicly defamed those 2 female investigators and told the entire state not to trust us, not to talk to us, not to give us leads, not to give us tips, not to send us messages. They tampered with our witnesses. They tampered with our investigation. They interfered with our ability to conduct an investigation. Whatever, man. Epic fail. against somebody who sees you so transparently, against somebody who sees right through it and can speak to it very eloquently now and lay it out in such a way that it presents a RICO case. And listen, I have no romanticization about living a long life if this thing goes south. If these people don't take me up on my offers and they don't start paying attention to what I'm saying, and I got to keep pushing and pushing and pushing, I could end up losing my life on this one. But I'm 50 years old. At what point do I not fight back? What point do I do fight back? So it's time to kick it up a notch and ensure that Jerry Holman loses his job. And then Mark Swistek is out of a job. The demotion of Marty Corley is a huge start. But Chris's family has gone through a false arrest that we haven't even discussed. It's not my story to tell. The Mitch Westerman stuff, the messages we were getting from Matt telling us that he was being asked to do things he wasn't comfortable doing. You guys, what they did to distract us and derail us was so obvious. And it's so angering. And we haven't even touched upon all of the distractions for the lawyers. Brad and Andy having to fight to keep their licenses. This is ridiculous. Oh, except I will say one thing. I now know without question that my boss was being asked to violate the gag order. And I don't appreciate you putting him in that position. And that is all I'm going to say for right now on that. Because that proof is headed out the door. There is no forgiveness for that one. I have a confession on tape about leaks. I'm going to use it this week. Maybe, I don't know if I can use it yet with you guys, but it's got to be sent to the court. I had gold mines of information buried in my text messages that I didn't even realize existed. And now those things are top of mind. So this human, not robot, who is still playing catch up for 1,000 different reasons and will no longer apologize for any of them, will continue to spill the tea, dig up the dirt, and report it right here. We are just getting started on this stuff. And I think by now you all realize I have those receipts. And that is why these people are terrified of me speaking out. I am going to be the one to expose it all. And it's going to be very uncomfortable for everyone who lied to each and every one of you on this case. Please make sure to hit the like button, the follow button, the share button. Subscribe to the channel for free. Just follow this, share it, comment. Let us know what you think in the comment section. Do you think the defense team was derailed? Or I'm sorry, do you think that the defense investigators were derailed? I can tell you Jason Jensen's people were. I know what I think. But I'm the one holding the proof. I'm the one who was there. I'm the one who lived it. And no one is going to gaslight me anymore into thinking that I don't know what I don't have right in front of me. This turned out a lot differently than I originally anticipated, but I think I'm okay with it because it gives me the opportunity to drop receipt after receipt after receipt, and it is time. Alright folks, I'm off for now. Like, follow, share, subscribe, do your thing. Talk it up in the comments section. If you want anywhere else to go for the right information on this case, you can always check out the Prof, the only YouTuber I trust right now in this whole mess. Really good dude. Just a good friend. So, anyway, have a good one everybody, and we'll talk to you soon. I'll be back to dig up more dirt. The Delphi.